everybody. Welcome to the Abroaders Travel Podcast, your weekly meetup with thousands of entrepreneurs, hustlers, creators, nomads, ninjas, wanderers, and world changers, all seeking to build the skills and connections to live a life without borders. If you want to learn more about what we do or download our entire podcast archive, check out the website, abroaders.com.
Happy Wednesday morning, and welcome to another episode of the Abroaders Travel Podcast. I am AJ, checking in from Medellin, Colombia, and I've got my good friend Eric. You are in Bahia, Brazil, taking some much-needed time off. You've been working a lot lately.
Yeah, man. Bahia is great. I'm actually at a little beach town called Itacaré, which is maybe it's actually like a 5.5 hour drive from Salvador, but that's mostly because the roads are treacherous. There's some kind of intense off-road feel to driving down the highway to this part of Bahia, but it's really worth the trip because just the scenery. It's just like it's small Brazilian life at its best. So it's been really nice. I actually got to check out Itacaré. We just got here today and spent a few days in Barra Grande, which is pretty close to here as well. So both have been super nice and highly recommended locations. If any of you guys are in Salvador, you can also get a relatively cheap flight here. So there's some other ways besides renting a car and driving south from Salvador, but super cool location, both of these places.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Bahia, that's a state in Brazil, is famous for having really beautiful beaches. It's in the northeast, and you hear a lot of people from the bigger cities in the south, from São Paulo, from Rio, talk about how much they love going to Bahia, even though most of the Brazilian coastline has really nice beaches, but once you get to the northeast, it's a little bit more special.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. The weather has been awesome so far too. Lots of blue skies. I think the thing that's interesting is this is definitely a place where Brazilians travel. We've seen a lot of folks from other places in Brazil that are staying at some of these posadas and little hotels. And the other thing that I really like about the place that we are now is it doesn't have, there's not a bunch of Hiltons and Hyatts and like the accommodations. It's more modest. If you're looking for a more luxury type travel experience, you probably want to go to a place that's, another bigger city or something like that, because the accommodations are very much little family owned, they're not hostels. They're much more sort of private accommodation type setups, but they're small little private rooms with an in-suite bathroom and a couple of hammocks, and like the place that we stayed in Barra Grande was run by an Italian family. There's like two brothers and a sister, I think, or a couple of different folks that had just picked up and left the south of Italy and bought this little spot on the beach and set up a really cool sort of bed and breakfast type place. And they're also super affordable. I think like on average we've been paying between $35 and $50 a night for two people for pretty cozy accommodations. And the last one that we were at was actually right on the beach. So it's just like walk out your front door, duck under the hammock, and take a few more steps and you're at the ocean.
And that sounds brilliant. I envy you.
Yeah, it's been a good little rest and relaxation. But certainly any of you listeners that are planning a trip to Salvador. Salvador is a super cool city, but it's a place that I feel like you can probably see most of the highlights unless you're going for Carnival, which is a different thing entirely. But I feel like Salvador is a place where you can spend three to 4 days and see everything. And it's really a shame if you visit Salvador and don't take a trip. There's a few places up the northern coast, a few hours north, and the places that I am, like I said, about 5 or 6 hours south by car, or a 45-minute flight to the next little airport. And just incredible, just outside of the big city, just away from all the pollution and hustle and bustle, and a real quality place to relax if you've got a few days.
Man, I almost forgot to ask, and I only heard a quick summary that you gave me about this, but you had a pretty interesting discovery on booking an award from South America to the United States. You found a pretty clever workaround that seemed too good to be true, but ended up working out for you, yeah?
Yeah, so definitely for listeners, this is not necessarily completely above board. So this is maybe what I would think of as sort of a gray hat trick. But to give some context, I was booking an award ticket back to Medellin, Colombia originally. And so I started out with the plan of going back from Brazil to reconnect with AJ in Colombia. And the award price for Singapore, which happens to be a really good program because it's a transfer partner of all four of the major transferable currencies. So SPG, Citi, Amex, and Chase all can move to Singapore. So it makes it a really nice currency if you can find a way to use those points. And Star Alliance is the biggest alliance, so there's a lot of flight options. So anyways, I booked my ticket here to Brazil from Medellin for $12,500. And originally that was the plan, to go back to Medellin and spend the same to return. And then I was going to get a cheap flight back to the US. And I changed plans and decided to go to Austin, Texas. I'm going to meet up with our head of marketing, Jake, and we're going to spend maybe a week working on some new stuff to try and get the word out about Abroaders. And in the process, I realized that Singapore charges 30,000 points instead of 12,500 points to go back to the U.S., which was a little bit of a bummer. I thought I was going to spend fewer points. And what I realized is that it is totally possible to tack on an extra flight that returns to South America. So I don't think that this works very well in the opposite direction. In other words, if you're traveling from the United States to South America, this trick is going to be a little bit harder to pull off. But what I'm going to do is essentially I booked an itinerary from Salvador, Brazil. I connect in Rio and then connect in Houston, Texas. And the final destination on my award ticket is Lima, Peru, which is also in South America. So even though I connect in the United States, my destination as far as the award chart is concerned is Peru. And so that made the ticket cost only 12,500 points. And this is why I say this is a little bit black hat. What you have the option to do if you connect in the United States like I am, is that you can effectively stop your itinerary there. And so there's a couple of really important things. Number one, it needs to be the end of the itinerary. So you can't do this on a round trip, like if I, had other flights on the itinerary, because if I miss my flight from Houston to Lima, it's going to cancel all the rest of the flights that are on the same record locator. So that's probably the most important thing. The second thing is you have to want to actually get off at Houston, which is sort of the case for me. I'm going to just stop in Houston and take a short Southwest flight over to Austin. So that makes it possible, essentially, if you are able to get off or end your itinerary at the first connection point, you know that you're going to get your bags because you have to take your luggage to go through the immigration process in the U.S., even if you're just transferring on the way to another country. And the last piece, obviously, you need to make sure that you've got any visa stuff in order for the final destination, and you got to be willing to risk if something goes wrong that they may reroute you to Lima, Peru. So I may have a little bit of an adventure, and there's a small chance that I end up in Lima, but I did want to check this out and just see if this sort of gray hat trick works.
Imagine that, getting rerouted to Lima, dropping in on Peru. We've actually been to that airport. I remember one of my first trips to South America, I remember we connected there, and it was so strange. We stayed on the flight. Everyone else got off the flight, and we stayed on the flight, and they serviced the plane while we were on the plane and waited to continue on to Santiago, Chile.
Oh God, yeah, that was back in the old British Airways Executive Club when it was a region-based chart. That was probably our first award trip together.
It was. Yeah, we went Detroit, New York, like Santiago, Buenos Aires, Rio, Miami, Detroit in business class.
Yeah, epic trip, man. That was back in the old days of Zone Base, so it's not possible to still book that ticket. But there are some other programs and I guess sort of similar opportunities that are out there. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes. This is also, I would say, your mileage may vary. Be careful. Like this is something where I'm experimenting, really open to the idea of running into some issues and possibly spend some extra miles to get there. But it is something that is worth giving a try. And I don't have a huge number of KrisFlyer miles in my account, thanks to it being a transferable currency. So worst case scenario, I can always, if I lose access to the miles in the particular account that I did this from, which I don't think very big risk. Just, my best judgment is that this is like I accidentally missed my flight to Lima and it's not a big deal. But you just kind of be aware when you're booking a ticket. This is sort of like the skip lagged game where you can potentially book a ticket, if you want to go to Chicago, but the prices are super expensive. New York to Chicago, you can book a ticket that goes to, Kansas City, Missouri, and connects in Chicago, and just hope that nobody notices you missing your last flight. That's sort of what I'm going to try out and see if I can save 17,500 miles by doing it.
All right. Well, you need to make sure that you report back, and don't let me forget to remind you to share that experience.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully we'll be reporting back from Austin after a short Southwest flight and not from Lima, trying to figure out what my next move is going to be.
Yeah, man. Speaking of Austin and you meeting up with Jake and the little retreat we had doing a bunch of work here in Medellin with George and Janelle, man, let's share with the community a couple updates, kind of what we're up to as a company and kind of the direction that we're going and the progress we're making with our product.
Yeah, well, so first of all, I guess the biggest thing that I want to say is thank you to all you guys that have been using the app. The response and the engagement has been amazing, and the feedback, AJ and I and the whole team know that there are some frustrating things, some features that we haven't quite finished up yet. So we wanted to take a second and just share some of the stuff we've got in mind, but a huge thank you to all you guys who have signed up at abroaders.com for the app and have used it, are starting to plan trips, are working on earning miles. The feedback you guys have given us is amazing. And I've heard we do a lot of back and forth. So when we do the card recommendation stuff, a lot of times I send out a text message to the people that I'm recommending the card. And I've gotten into some really cool conversations with people, either on the website. There's a chat feature on the website, and also just in text and email going back and forth. And so thank you so much for the people that have also shared this, because at least 4 or 5 different cases where I'm talking with someone about card recommendations, they've mentioned that they got referred by one of the other users. So that's been super cool, and I'm really excited to actually roll out some more features that make it even easier to share travel plans with your friends and to be able to plan to use points together, because that's been one of the best parts about traveling, and in my experience, is bringing around the people that I care about to join me on these trips. Yeah,
man, for sure. Well, you being the product visionary, man, you being the head of product, don't want to put you on the spot here, but is there anything you can share with the community about things that they can be expecting in December as far as feature rollouts, as modest as they may be? I know that we've got a bunch of stuff on the production line that George is working on.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, you're definitely right that at the moment it's still super modest. There's still little changes, but if you haven't checked out your account recently, there's a bunch of stuff that's now editable. And it's super important for us to be able to actually, when we look at your account, because as we've said before, AJ and I and Janelle and Jake are all sort of going in personally and reviewing all the information. So when you put in your travel plans, or the regions that you're planning on visiting, stuff like that, we're actually taking a look at that and trying to figure out which combinations of cards would help out the points balances that you already have and be able to work together for the trip. So we've got some cool stuff. For folks who haven't signed up, we've now got regions of interest, and I'm really excited about where that's going to go. And very soon, I think in December, it's going to be possible to just add regions of interest along with your other travel plans.
Yeah,
and
so
what behind that? Yeah,
sorry to cut you off. Yeah, so to give you guys an idea of what the regions of interest are, is we've gotten a lot of feedback from people that they don't have exact travel plans to particular cities on particular dates, but they would be interested in, say, visiting Asia or visiting Africa or Australia, New Zealand. So now there's an option when you sign up. You don't have to provide specific travel plans if you don't have any. You can skip that step, and then you can just pick the regions you're interested in, and then we've got that on file, and then ultimately in the future we'll be able to alert you on great opportunities, whether they be paid or award flights.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see. So this is definitely not something we're necessarily going to have ready in December, but I'd like to expand on the regions of interest, and I'd like feedback, especially anybody listening, if you've got ideas about types of trips that we might be able to help you plan. I know Worldpackers, our friend Rick Lima, has kind of a cool thing with their accommodations where, so slight digression, but Worldpackers lets find hospitals that you work at in a bunch of different places. And in addition to like saying, okay, I want to go to Australia, and they give you a list of all the hospitals they work with in Australia, they also have a very cool feature where it's like, I want like an outdoorsy kind of experience. And so they do, accommodation in national parks, or I want to go to a beach, and they do a bunch of accommodation. So it's not like I definitely want to go to South America, but it's beaches in Australia, it's beaches in Africa, it's beaches in Brazil. So there's like category types. And I think that could actually be an interesting thing and something that would be really helpful, because I know a lot of people have said, at least in just sort of feedback that I've received, that like, hey, I don't really know where I want to go, but I know that winter sucks in Michigan and I want to go someplace warm, so Caribbean, maybe South America. So I think that could be a kind of a cool way we might be able to expand on that regions of interest in the future, and be able to proactively reach out to people and say, hey, you've got enough points for the Caribbean. Maybe you don't quite have enough points for South America or Europe, but you can get to Central America and Caribbean. How's Costa Rica sound? Those sorts of things I think could take a little bit of the stress out of planning and just give people cool options that they could work with.
Yeah, exactly, man. I know a lot of people have dream trips, or they've got really particular things they want, but there's a lot of people out there, like you said, man, they want to get away, get somewhere new, have a new experience, go to somewhere that has been well received by other travelers, and just have a good time mixing it up, seeing something new.
Awesome. Well, so I guess to wrap up the updates, the other couple of things that we're working on. So, by the way, if you have gone through and created an account already, a lot of people let us know that they weren't exactly sure about the dates that they signed up for different credit cards. And I wanted to just kind of point out that that's something super important. And we realized that after you did the initial sign-up survey, you couldn't edit that. And we've just gotten that part fixed. So you can edit the date, open and close cards. And it's really important to do that before you ask us for card recommendations. So if you go in there and you're looking for AJ and I to take a look at your travel plans and try and figure out which cards are going to be the best ones to help you earn points, knowing which cards you opened and specifically when, at least if you can get it within a couple of months, is really helpful, because as you guys know, if you listen, there's a lot of different rules with the banks in terms of, Chase has the 524 rule. Citi just introduced some new rules about it has to be at least a year since you opened or closed a card that earns the same type of points. So anyways, we take all of the thinking out of that and make sure you guys don't have to know those rules. But if you can, take a look at your credit report. CreditKarma.com is a great place to find the dates that you opened and closed accounts, and update that information in the app. And I think very soon, probably sometime in December, we'll have the ability to add new cards. If you do sign up for cards or forgot to add one, that'll be available too.
Yeah, and for those of you that have not created an account yet, go to abroaders.com, click on the big orange button. It's completely free, and we would be keen to help you save a bunch of money on your next flight.
Awesome. And again, thanks so much. If you know somebody else who likes travel, send them our way. We will love you for it forever.
One final update that Eric and I are really excited about, and this should make your life easier, is after 150 unique URLs that we had to check and make sure the URL is available, and sometimes they're long and sometimes it was just too much. So Eric had the brilliant idea that from now on, the URL from the show notes will be the episode number. So you can find show notes for today's episode at abroaders.com/151. Just 3 digits, 151. And next week, you'll be able to find the episode at abroaders.com/152. And I cannot communicate how excited I am about no longer having to think up URLs for our shows.
You wouldn't think that would be stressful, but at some point it's just like, oh man, like what haven't we used? And the other thing is, obviously, sometimes we forget to tell you guys, and that's not cool because we got some good links and resources. So you'll always know as long as you check out which episode it is. It'll be at that number. Today, I've got a pretty cool little segment that I wanted to add for core content today, talking about which card you should use. This is something we've covered a little bit here and there, and I thought it would be really useful to do just a wrap up. So today we're going to talk specifically about which cards you should be using for travel expenses. I'm going to go into some details about the different insurance and other benefits that come with those. We're going to also talk a little bit about business cards and some of the types of business expenses that are out there that can be a big advantage. Obviously, ad spend, there's some bonuses. So I'm going to just kind of recap the best of in terms of cards. And also something we don't talk about as much as we should is when all else fails and there's not a 5X or a 3X or even a 2X, which card is the best for just regular non-bonus spending. And it's always good to have one of those cards in your wallet that you just know you're getting great valuable points. So I'm pretty excited to share this segment, and a big thank you to Janelle. She did a bunch of research and really helped me put this together. So thank you to her as well. And I hope you guys enjoy. That'll be at the end of the show after AJ gives you this week's news and updates.
This week's news and updates we are going to keep short and sweet because we think there is way too much noise and selling going on with promotions and discounts that ultimately aren't that good when you really compare them to one another because of all this Black Friday stuff. So we've only got a few things we're going to touch on. We're going to touch on a credit card offer, buy miles opportunity, transfer bonus, an airline joining an alliance, and then we've got a crazy travel and random news update about a pretty bizarre happening on a flight that was heading to Pakistan. So to start off, a few weeks ago, we mentioned the Avianca Life Miles credit card with a 60,000 point bonus. And so that is actually now live. Previously, you had to register for it. There's a couple things you want to know about this offer. When you go to apply for this card, you're going to see two different cards. There's the Avianca Vita card and the Avianca Vuela card. The Vita card's got a 20,000 point bonus, and the Vuela card has a 40,000 point bonus. However, there is a promotion code to get an additional 20,000 points that we will link to in the show notes because that's what they previously advertised. They said it was going to be 60,000 points, which 60,000 life miles is that's good stuff. You can definitely do some traveling with that. So just make sure if you do end up going for this card that you're conscious of stuff like 524. Is there a Chase card that you're going to want in the next few months, and applying for this card would make you ineligible? So definitely you want to give that some thought. If you want us to do this stuff for you for free, remember you can go to broaders.com, create a free account. We'll do credit card recommendations for you based on your personal information and travel plans. So to wrap this one up, the offer is now live. You can apply for it, and remember to use that promo code to get yourself an additional 20,000 life miles to make the bonus 60,000. And this is also interesting. We haven't seen this in a while. The bonus is showing after first card use. That's something that is becoming more and more rare. With the folks that have the Aviator Red card, which used to be the Barclay US Airways card, that was a first use one, I believe. But now it's really hard to find a card that you don't have to at least spend $1,000 on. So that is pretty interesting. I'm surprised that they did that, but that is what they did. Next piece of news and updates is something you may have seen with a buy miles promotion for Alaska Airlines. I know we've been banging the same drum the entire time we've done this podcast, but don't buy miles speculatively. Do them with something in mind. However, that being said, there are some really good things you can do with Alaska Miles if you have a game plan. A really good option for them. It's since Alaska is one of those funky airlines that's got all these different partners, but they're not in one of the main alliances. Cathay Pacific is a great option on business class. So the way using Alaska Miles works is it's slightly complicated in the fact that depending on their partner, they've got different award charts, which means it's going to cost a different amount of miles depending on which airline you fly. But one of the sweet spots is Cathay Pacific in business class. It is now much cheaper than American Airlines after American devalued their chart. So that's a really good opportunity to essentially what you can do here is you can get a business class flight for the price of economy if you go ahead and you buy and redeem these things the right way. But as if you're a novice and you're just getting started, I would not advise you doing that. It's just too much can go wrong. And speaking of too many things going wrong, Amex has an offer, the big transfer bonus to Alitalia. And One Mile at a Time wrote a really nice write-up about this. And the moral of the story is Alitalia is a funky program. If you're not really comfortable with it, just stay away. Don't touch the thing with a 50-foot pole. However, if you are familiar and comfortable with Alitalia, then go for it. It's kind of like Alaska. They've got a funky chart, and using their miles is a little bit tricky. But if you are going to be on an Alitalia operated flight, actually on the side of the plane it says Alitalia, then you should probably be okay as far as the negative changes that they rolled out in October. But once again, if you don't have a solid game plan for using those Amex points once they get to Alitalia, just keep them in Amex. Amex points are super valuable. They got really good transfer partners. You got Singapore, Delta, Air France, just to name a few. So Amex points, they're going nowhere. They're going to be very, very valuable. So don't transfer them to a program that you're not comfortable with. Final piece of news and updates before I share kind of an odd thing about this flight going to Pakistan that had some functional issues on the plane is Aer Lingus, the Irish carrier, is going to join the One World Alliance. We don't have specific information as to actually the date it's going to happen. However, their spokespeople say that it's going to happen in 2017. So why this matters is it's just going to be one extra option in the One World Alliance. Currently, the only real stuff you can do with Aer Lingus, you can use British Airways Avios, because I believe the holding company or the parent company of British Airways owns them. But now they're going to make the move to join the One World Alliance, which would put them with the likes of British Airways, Air Berlin, American Airlines. So this means that now you can earn American Airlines miles on Aer Lingus once they actually join the One World Alliance. And you'll also be able to use your American Airlines miles to fly on Aer Lingus. So I know Ireland's a pretty common destination, and they operate a lot of flights from the east coast of the U.S. to Ireland. So that's pretty good for the folks with AA miles or SPG miles that they may happen to transfer to AA. So that's good stuff. That's all for the news and updates. We wanted to keep this one brief. There's just information overload on social media and on the internet and everything going on. So we'll keep it short and sweet. Final thing that I found was kind of interesting is that a Pakistan Airlines flight diverted to, I believe, Manchester, somewhere in the UK, on their way to, I believe it was Lahore, because all the toilets were blocked. And the way that toilets on airplanes work is they all share some sort of the same system as far as the plumbing goes. So if there's a really big problem with one, there's a really big problem with all of them. And some passenger put something down the toilet. I don't know what the hell they were doing. However, and that caused all of the toilets to be blocked, and because of that they diverted. I don't know exactly when they found about this, but I believe this flight was from Toronto to Lahore, and they ended up diverting into the UK. So some jerk cost everyone a big delay and the airline a lot of money because they wanted to I don't even know why you do that. I mean, if you're a drug smuggler and you think you're going to get caught, but I don't know, just doesn't make any sense to me, but that's what happened. So once again, show notes for today's episode will be at abroaders.com/151. From here on out, you will be able to easily find the show notes by just going to the number of the episode, abroaders.com/151. Next week's would be 152. And now I will let Eric give you guys a little bit more information on which cards to use and why that matters.
Okay, so today we're going to talk a little bit about which rewards credit card you should be using for your regular purchases. Now, it goes without saying that if you're working on a sign-up bonus, that's always the best place to be putting your everyday spending. You want to do that as much as possible until you reach the spending requirement to earn the bonus. But most of us are not always working on a sign-up bonus, and so it pays a lot to know what the benefits are associated with your cards for different types of purchases. So today we're going to talk a little bit more specifically about travel purchases, since there's some important insurance benefits and other just general travel benefits that can improve your travel day when you use specific cards. Then we're going to talk about cards you want to focus for business spending and potentially get some big advantages for business purchases. And then lastly, dive into personal cards to use for everyday spending that's not travel. So to start off, let's talk about the different travel expenses and the cards that have some big advantages there. First off, the Chase Sapphire Reserve, which we've talked a lot about lately, offers 3 points per dollar on travel expenses. So that includes things like car rentals, Airbnb, hotels, airfare, and actually lots more, buses, trains, basically any merchant that codes as a travel. So that's a great extra bonus in the number of points. And the Reserve card also has some great insurance benefits, which we're going to dive into in just a second. Other good ones in terms of bonus spending on travel, you want to keep in mind that the Amex Platinum card, the personal version, offers 5 points per dollar spent on airfare. So that's even better than the Sapphire Reserve card. And then there's also some hotel cards that offer great benefits like late checkout, upgrades, free Wi-Fi, and similarly some co-branded airline cards that offer extra benefits like priority boarding or free checked bags. So depending on the type of purchase, there can be some big advantages that can even outweigh whether you're earning an extra 1x or 2x points for each dollar spent. So let's start off with one of the most common ones, and that is with car rental. So when you rent a car, if you use a credit card, you often get insurance coverage that can essentially replace the very expensive insurance package that most car rental agencies want to sell you. And so probably the best cards for this are the Sapphire Reserve and the Sapphire Preferred card from Chase. And the reason there is that both of those cards offer primary coverage, which just basically means that you don't have to file a claim with your regular car insurance provider. So the insurance company that you use for your regular car when you're not traveling is not going to be involved in any of the claims process if you use the Sapphire Reserve or Sapphire Preferred or any other card that offers primary coverage. So that can be a great reason that can dramatically outweigh the value of getting a few extra cents per point or a few extra points per dollar spent. Next up is trip delay insurance. And so this often happens if your trip is delayed or needs to be canceled because of weather, or maybe you get sick, or there's some sort of family emergency. Lots of cards offer this insurance when you pay for all or part of your travel expense. So that could be airfare or hotel. With the card, they're going to give you some extra coverage in case something comes up. Next up is luggage delay and loss protection. And this one is a little bit less common. There are some cards that explicitly don't include this coverage. So if this is something that's important to you, I always find that the luggage delay can be a huge value. If your bags get tied up and you need to buy, just basics, some extra clothes, some, new toothbrush, stuff like that, it can be really nice. Most cards offer you about $100 per day that your luggage is delayed, and often have pretty good insurance, $3,000 to $5,000 if your luggage ends up getting lost. Those are the big core insurance benefits. There's often also some emergency medical insurance or evacuation that can come with some of these cards. And so that can be something that you might want to look into and just sort of see what's available with your card so you know what other supplemental insurance you need to buy for a specific trip. But those, obviously, we hope nothing very dramatic or awful happens to any of you guys. So it's probably not one of the insurance factors that should be driving your decision for which card to use, but definitely worth knowing what's available so that you can make a good decision about whether you need to purchase any extra travel or health insurance for your trip. The other business card that's really worth mentioning here is the Chase Ink Business Preferred card, which is coming out later this year, so probably end of 2016, and is going to offer 3x points on the first $50,000 in spending combined across the following categories: travel, including airfare, hotels, taxis, and trains, any shipping purchases, advertising purchases like Google and Facebook ads, and internet, cable, and phone services. So rather than the breakdown with the Ink Plus card, where you get 5x for a couple of those categories and 2x for some of the others, this is a flat 3x per dollar spent on all of those categories for the first $150,000 each year. So that could be a really good spot if you have relatively high business spending and a way to earn some super valuable points. Chase Ultimate Rewards are some of the best that are out there. Okay, so that brings us to where you put your personal spend when you're not working on a sign-up bonus and when there aren't any special categories. So it should be noted that a lot of personal rewards cards offer spending multipliers like we've talked about before on different categories, including gas, groceries, pharmacies. So it's very important to take a quick look at the cards you have or any cards you're considering opening up and seeing how those might factor into your regular spending habits. I know for lots of people, the Sapphire Reserve, the 3x spending on restaurants is a big part of their total spending. Cards that bonus travel can be a great combination as well. But I wanted to mention a couple of cards that are really good for non-bonus spend. So this is essentially the spend that doesn't have 2x for a particular category. And those cards are the Chase Freedom card, which is an awesome product because it's got no annual fee. This is the Chase Freedom Unlimited card. And you get 1.5 Chase Ultimate Rewards per dollar spent on everything. So this is a really good opportunity for all that non-bonus spend is going to be earning extra Ultimate Rewards. And the key thing here is that the Freedom card by itself works like a cashback card. So in other words, each point you earn is worth a certain cash value, but you can't transfer to the Ultimate Rewards travel partners like United and Southwest and Singapore and Air France. However, if you have one of Chase's premium cards, which could either be the Inc. Business Preferred card that we just talked about, the Inc. Plus card, or either the Sapphire Preferred or the Sapphire Reserve personal cards, as soon as you have any of those more premium cards that do come with an annual fee, your points that you've earned with the Chase Freedom can now be transferred to any of the airline partners. So that's a really powerful combo. Basically, hang on to either the Sapphire Preferred or one of the premium business cards to allow yourself to transfer those points to airline and hotel partners, and then put all of your spending on the Freedom Unlimited card, which earns 1.5 points. Basically, put all spending except the spending that's already got a bonus with a different card that you have. The other one to mention for non-bonus spend is the Amex Everyday Preferred card, which offers 1.5 points per dollar spent as long as you make at least 30 transactions per month. So you do need to use the card quite a few times, but as long as you use it once a day, you're going to get an extra 50% of the points credited the following month. So as long as you can reach that threshold, and if you're not super confident about being able to reach 30 purchases, there's also a no-fee version of the Amex Everyday card that gives you a 20% bonus for making 20 purchases in a month. So that's a really good alternative. It's still better than 1 cent per point as long as you reach that threshold, and helps you earn a bunch of super valuable Amex points, which can also be transferred without any other Amex products. So you can transfer those points to the membership rewards partners. And there's 17 travel partners, so that can be a really good deal. If you don't have either of those cards, I think the last one that I'd mention for non-bonus spend is probably the Starwood Preferred Guest card from American Express. And the reason there is you earn 1 point per dollar spent, but because when you transfer 20,000 star points to one of their airline partners, you get a 5,000 point bonus, your actual spending comes out to 1.25 points per dollar spent. So that can be a really good deal as well.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Broaders Travel Podcast. That is all for this week.
Hey, Broaders, don't be shy. Hop over to the website and join our email list for exclusive travel hacking content. If you like what we're up to, the best way you can support the show is by leaving us a 5-star review on iTunes. Lastly, we would love to hear from you, so send your show feedback to